Welcome and good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I am Christina Gordon. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts. And on behalf of the Women's Foundation and Wellesley College, thank you for being here and for your commitment to empowering women and girls across our great state. We're especially grateful to our research partners here at Wellesley Centers for Women, and to our grantee partners who also have come today, who bring this work to life every day in our communities across the Commonwealth. I'm particularly excited to hear from two of them as part of our roundtable discussion, Natalie Martinez of Girls Inc. of Boston and Lynn, and Lisa Guillon of We Can. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. We're really excited for that. Why this moment matters. Massachusetts is often ranked as one of the best states in the country, as you will hear today. In many ways, women and girls are thriving here. Our state has been a leader in advancing workplace equity, from pay transparency legislation and strong equal pay protections, to paid family and medical leave, earned sick time, and making community college free. These policies create real opportunity and stability for families and signal what's possible when women's economic security is prioritized. And yet, this research highlights a deeper story, progress alongside very persistent gaps. Too many women, particularly mothers, single women, and older women, are still navigating economic insecurity. Too many girls are achieving academically while still facing barriers to confidence, well-being, and future financial stability. This moment matters because data helps us see both the progress and the paradox clearly, and challenges us to ensure that the promise of these advances reaches every woman and girl in Massachusetts. Research can be very, very powerful, but only if the data moves us forward. Today is not just about understanding the numbers, it's about asking, what do we do with them? How do we translate insight into investment? How do we ensure that what we know works reaches more women and girls? At the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts, we are committed to strengthening the women and girls serving ecosystem across the state. We invest in organizations that are building economic stability, expanding opportunity, and creating pathways to long-term success. We believe that when women are economically secure, this can translate into achievement, into opportunity that impacts entire communities and enables them all to thrive. This report reinforces why sustained focus investment in women and girls is not optional. It's not an add-on, and it is not a nice to have. It is essential. I hope today sparks conversation, connection, and renewed commitment. Thank you for being part of this important work and for helping ensure that progress in Massachusetts is truly shared by all women and girls. And with that, I am pleased to turn it over to Patty Satterthwaite, our president of the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts, whose leadership continues to strengthen and connect the women and girls serving organizations across our state. Here's Patty.
Thanks, Christina, and a high five for getting this done. We're so excited to be partnered with the Wellesley Centers for Women on this important research, and we're thrilled to introduce the researchers who will walk us through the findings and what they mean for women and girls in Massachusetts. Georgia Hall, PhD, is the interim executive director of the Wellesley Centers for Women and the director of the National Institute of Out-of-School Time. Georgia specializes in research and evaluation on youth development programs, settings, and learning experiences. Her work is focused extensively on strategies to improve out-of-school time program quality, along with investigations of summer learning programs and STEM initiatives for girls. Georgia is currently serving as the principal investigator on the National Institute of Out-of-School Time Technical Assistance Partnership with the Massachusetts Department of Education's 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. Got that? It's a cool job, I'm sure. Georgia regularly presents on topics related to program quality, measurement, and staff training out-of-time audiences across the country. Georgia is also the managing editor of the After School Matters Journal. Sari Pekala Kerr is a senior research scientist and lecturer at Wellesley College and a research economist at the National Bureau of Economic Research. Sari is the program director at the Wellesley Centers for Women and a lecturer in the economics department of Wellesley College. Her current research interests are in the area of entrepreneurship, immigration, and the intersection of family and the labor market. Sari is primarily interested in how labor markets, along with policy and industrial conditions, shape the behavior of firms and the career trajectories of their employees. She's also frequently consulted by governments regarding high-skilled immigration and testified at the U.S. Congress on the impact of immigrant entrepreneurs in the U.S. economy. Her work is also regularly covered in popular media outlets, and Sari received her PhD from the University of Finland in 2000. After years as a consultant at Charles River Associates in Toronto and Boston, she returned to academia and has taught courses in economics at BU, MIT, the University of Helsinki, and Wellesley College. So please join me in welcoming Georgia and Sari, and thank you, Georgia and Sari, for our excellent partnership. It's been really fun, and thank you for this amazing comprehensive report.
So thank you so much, Patty, and it is really cool work. I'll attest to that. We have a wonderful opportunity to do work that contributes to change in our world, and that's extremely honoring and important to us. So I want to, on behalf of my colleague Sari and others here from WCW, just give you a warm welcome to Wellesley College. First of all, welcome here to campus, the leading institution for undergraduate education for women in the world. And also tell you a little bit about Wellesley Centers for Women. So we use the acronym WCW, but it's the largest research and action institute in the United States that is focused on women and gender and driven by social change. And we just finished celebrating, actually we're in our 51st year, or maybe have just finished our 51st year, so we're eager for another 50 more. So WCW, along with the Madeleine Albright Institute and the Hillary Clinton Center, we're part of Wellesley College's Wellesley in the World Centers, and called the Wagner Centers. And the Wagner Centers are a hub and catalyst for research and global solutions, especially on critical issues related to women, democracy, and gender equity. It has been an absolute thrill for us to partner with the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts on this project to investigate the status of women and girls. And in this investigation, we focused on three main markers of women and girls' well-being. And so I'd like to just show you tell you a little bit about how we went about this project. It was a year-long project in working with the foundation, and these are the three ways that sort of the larger buckets in which we started to do the investigation that we have now completed. So I don't expect you to be able to read or see this list, but I wanted to show it to you just to show the magnitude of the different data sources that we really tried to bring together in order to look at this question of the status of women and girls in Massachusetts, and particularly from the point of view of economic empowerment. So as a research team here at WCW, and included a number of researchers and research interns, we started by talking a lot with each other and creating outlines as to if we use these three buckets that I mentioned back here before, what are the kind of things that we wanted to investigate, and how could all of these different data sources bring us the kind of data that was going to be helpful to us. We continue to meet probably over the course of this past year every 2 weeks to think about what kind of sources all of these different data points were bringing to us, and how we could resolve some of the challenges that we faced in bringing this data forward and being able to download data set after data set. And this, I have to mention that this was a challenging time in terms of federal data, to be able to find what we needed to find and know that it was going to consistently be available for a period of time for us to be able to utilize it. So there were a lot of challenges along the way in regards to the data. So having gone through that process, we came to a point where we were able to really bring together data to these 3 buckets and be able to bring that back in conversation with the foundation and think about how we could bring this forward into a report to present back to you the things that we felt were the most important in thinking about this question of economic empowerment. So we're going to start with talking a little bit about the economic side, and then we'll talk more about education and health, and then move on to the panel part of the presentation today. So I'm going to turn it over first to my colleague Sari, who's going to give us the economic report.
All right, so we'll start on a happy note. I'm an economist, so we'll not end up maybe on the happiest note in my part, but at least we start well. So Massachusetts is actually it's a great place to live in, according to many studies and rankings. So we have for women as well as men and children. So we have high female labor force participation, much higher than the national average. We've recently enacted many laws to improve pay equality and transparency, to try to improve everyone's ability to negotiate their wage as they start a new job. We've implemented a paid family leave of 12 weeks, which is pretty, big at least in the U.S. context. And then we've been ranked again. New rankings just came out from Wallet Hub. Massachusetts is the #1 state for women. It was true for last year. It's true for this year. And so some of the reasons include good work-life balance here, access to high-quality childcare, and many nice amenities in the state. And so that's the happy news. But against all this positive backdrop, we've enjoyed obviously strong economy, nice economic growth, innovation, large STEM sector in the state. It is true that we're still dealing with a lot of structural and long-term inequality in terms of gender. And the strong economy is nice, but the benefits are definitely not enjoyed universally across all people in the state. So our report, the economic side in particular, focuses on these inequalities. We show large regional inequalities. Massachusetts is very dominated, obviously, by the metro Boston area, but the realities of the Boston area are very different than, say, in the western part of the state, or in many cities, even in the eastern part of the state. We show the large gender disparities in the report, and those are often amplified by large racial and ethnic disparities as well. So that's a lot of our report. So that's some of the good, and then some of the challenges. So Massachusetts is an interesting place to look at for anyone. It's a very high education, high income state. Actually ranks #1 in terms of education in the U.S. and right at the top also in terms of high incomes. And so average female earnings actually are high in Massachusetts, about $90,000 for full-time, full-year working women. Interestingly, of course, male earnings are much higher, about $120,000 for full-time, full-year working men. And so when you look at these gender pay gaps, earnings gaps, they actually are not that small in Massachusetts, mostly because the male earnings are so high, and especially at the very top of the earnings distribution, the gaps are very large. Women, on average, the full-time, full-year working women earn about 75 cents per every dollar that men make. The highest earners in Massachusetts tend to be the white non-Hispanic men and Asian men. Lowest earners are, I'm going to hop over, are Hispanic and Black women. Again, I'm showing here some, it's a little bit hard to see. There are some numbers showing sort of by gender, who are the high earners, who are the low earners. Again, you can start thinking about the pay gaps. We often think about the pay gap relative to white men as the benchmark. And so the graph on the right shows you everyone's sort of earnings relative to white men. And you'll see that the largest pay gaps relative to white men are for Hispanic women and Black non-Hispanic women. They earn about half or a little bit less than a half of what typical white men, non-Hispanic men, full-time, full-year earn. And so a lot of our economic research was then geared around that, what explains this, what's happening. We know from a lot of, there's a large literature of studies that has looked at it, and so we were able to look at it similarly for Massachusetts. So some of the explanations, of course, include sort of not any more educational attainment. Women have already surpassed men in sort of college education, but the types of degrees that women obtain, the college majors, their field of study often lead to occupations and jobs that pay less than those that men obtain. Women tend to accumulate less work experience. There's career gaps, and those are oftentimes related to parenthood, of course. And so we show some significant motherhood penalties in Massachusetts. The fathers actually don't experience a penalty. Instead, they enjoy a nice fatherhood premium instead. So that's not just true in Massachusetts, it's true overall. And the occupations is an interesting thing to take a little bit of a deep dive into. So over the last, 50, 100 years, the occupational distribution of men and women has converged significantly. But there's still lots of male occupations and female occupations. And this chart shows you broad occupation groups, and for example, the most male-heavy occupation is construction. 97% of construction workers are men. Most female-heavy occupation is healthcare support workers, and about 84% of women in healthcare support services. And interestingly, of course, the pay is very different in the top male occupations versus the top female occupations, and sort of top 5 male occupations have an hourly wage of about $40 per hour in Massachusetts, whereas the top female occupations about $33 per hour. So that's how you can already see kind of this occupational segregation is really driving the gender pay gap a lot. And so, again, a lot of the initial work was on full-time, full-year workers, but women are much less likely to be full-time, full-year workers than men. Women actually work part-time. The labor force participation, while it's high in Massachusetts, it's still, around 76%, so not all women are working either. The second part of this second part of our economic analysis is sort of more focused on household incomes, household structures, and trying to understand households that are in poverty. About 1 in 10 of Massachusetts households are below the federal poverty line. And of those households in poverty, 2/3 are actually female-headed. They're often not employed, so the female head of household is not employed in 58% of those households, or they're working poor because they work for minimum wage. It's about 17% of the households in poverty, female-headed households in poverty are working for minimum wages. And now this one is hopefully a little easier to see. We compare 2-parent households and single-parent female-headed households, and note that single-mom households are about 4 to 10 times more likely to fall under the federal poverty line than the 2-parent households. The federal poverty line is an interesting concept, often used in economics, but it's not a very sufficient measure in a place like Massachusetts, where the cost of living is extremely high. It's about $15,000 for a single person and $32,000 for a family of 4. But in a state, especially around the metro area, someone who has household incomes that low would be, in fact, very poor. So we looked at a minimum cost of living measure for Massachusetts. How many households households actually make or have incomes high enough that they would have this minimum cost of living required for reasonable living. It's no luxuries, just basic necessities. So in fact, that's the pretty stark numbers there in the last column. If you look, about 95% of Hispanic single mom households and Black non-Hispanic households are not making enough income to even have that minimum cost of living measure met. And these are families with children. Single moms really struggle. But it's not just families with children who struggle with poverty. Older women are especially likely to be under various poverty conditions. And it's understandable if you think about the career trajectory of women, the gaps they take, lower earnings, so less accumulated wealth, less accumulated retirement savings, and by the time you hit 55, women over 65, they just make about 25,000 a year in terms of incomes, which is about 57% of what men of similar age have, and more than 4 in 10 of those older women have incomes that put them under the cost of living threshold as well. So women's trajectories, whether you have children after the children are gone, are just often marked by much less income, much less wealth, and that puts us in a precarious position economically. So as I said, an economist brought us from a happy place to a sad place, and now I can hand it back to Georgia for hopefully some better news.
Thank you so much, Sari. And what I'll say is that the paradox does seem to continue in the field of education also. Let's see if I can, there we go. Massachusetts is considered as having one of the best ranked public school systems in the country. Just behind the District of Columbia, about 90% of Massachusetts adults have a high school degree, and 43% have bachelor's degrees or higher. So we're considered a highly educated state in terms of our population, et cetera. But as I said, the paradox in terms of being highly ranked and then looking at what that data actually looks like for women and girls, gives us pause. To start with a little bit about what girls do in the state in regards to public education, high school girls graduate high school at a higher rate than boys, 91% to 87%. But overall, if you start to look at the types of programs that girls and boys attend differently is where we start to create that trajectory that lands us in a different place. So 53% of boys participate in career pathways versus 46.5% of girls. And boys are more likely to participate in programs that give students access to specific industries through coursework and experience. So these are just this chart just shows you a listing of some of those different types of pathways, and you can see the difference between participation. So things like After Dark and some of the career connection pathways are pathways that are likely to, in 5 or 6 years of high school, enroll you or put you on a trajectory towards a high demand industry. And so if you think about how that all plays out in terms of eventual career pathway, pay, et cetera, you can see that girls are coming into that, their trajectories are coming into a disadvantage in terms of the types of careers that are available to them. And you saw in Sari's report the things that males tend to dominate in terms of careers versus females. 6 years after high school, girls are more likely to be graduating from high school. They're more likely to enroll in college right away. But in the end, after 6 years of leaving high school, they tend to earn about $5,000 less than their counterpart males who went through high school with them. So starting in about 6th grade, Massachusetts boys enroll in computer science classes at a higher rate than girls. And we've just pulled out this particular area. There are other areas that we could look at, but this one is particularly striking, computer science. Again, going back to that concept of what are the pathways, what are the trajectories that this leads to. And as we know, we live in a very digital world right now, and having the background in computer science certainly can be considered an advantage. And you think about how it sets in motion the plans towards choices for higher education and choices for career. Irregularities in the education pathway can lead to issues with persistence and career advancement, income over the lifetime, and debt accumulation. The National Center for Education Statistics shows that nationally more than 73% of undergrads with dependents were women. And in the same year in Massachusetts, so this was the 2020 data, the same year in Massachusetts, it was 84% of undergrads with dependents are women. So this is just a start to some of the things that we might call irregularities, in the sense of women, because of their requirements around childcare, et cetera, come in and out of their high school, they're in and out of their educational pathways. And of course that can be very impactful, again, in terms of career, salary, et cetera. All of these things sort of continue to impact the trajectory of women as they move through education and career pathways. A higher percentage of female students compared to male students at the certificate, the associate's, and bachelor's degree level. So across all of those levels of education, a higher amount of females also take loans to fund their education. And they borrow a higher average than males do, so $43,000 compared to about $38,000. All of these things together waterfall into a very challenging context around girls and women as they pursue through educational opportunities. And if you think about it also, especially related to dependence and childcare, the fact that women are taking more loans and doing childcare work means, you know, less opportunity in terms of salary, career advancement, et cetera. So I'm sorry, this is not better news or information than what you shared, but it all translates into what Sari was sharing in terms of economic power. I want to jump to say a few things about health now also. Sorry about that. In 2024, America's Health Ranking Report, Massachusetts fared very well, and we ranked number 2 as a healthy state for girls and women. The healthiest state was New Hampshire, followed by Massachusetts, and then Minnesota, New Jersey, and Vermont. There's a survey that's taken by our high school youth here. I think it's yearly, if not every 2 years, and it's not every student in Massachusetts, but it's a significant number of students who, at the high school level, who participate in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And so we're able to gain a lot of information about girls and their experiences related to health issues and how they feel about, a range of things that would have to do with health during their high school years. So this data right here, I just pulled the yes answers actually, because this chart was actually a little bit too big for me to even get on a slide. But I think you can graphically just see the difference right away. And this expresses teen girls versus teen boys who reported feeling sad or hopeless most of the time for 2 weeks and more, such that it changed the way that they took care of tasks, had responsibilities, et cetera. And so these are high school girls, these are the numbers, and you can see how they reported that differently, feeling sad or hopeless. This chart presents, again, data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey going from 2017 to 2023. And this is reporting the percent of girls and boys reporting feeling threatened, injured at school, or being bullied. And I think the most important part here to look at is that change from 2017, way on the left, to 2023. And certainly for girls, it increased in each one of these areas. So except for physical fights at school, which is the second one there. But all the others, which includes threatened or injured, bullied at school, safety concerns, and ever being treated unfairly in regards to, because of race or ethnicity. So on every one of these measures, over time from 2017 to 2013, girls, it's been reported as an increase in those experiences. In the U.S., the teen birth rate in U.S. since the 1950s has dramatically lowered, which is a wonderful thing. And it's fallen over probably 75% over the years since 1950. It's calculated on births per 1,000 females per year between the ages of 15 and 19. And so here in Massachusetts, our birth rate is 5.8 births per 1,000 girls, age 15 to 19. What's interesting here, one of the things that we looked at, which was very important to the foundation, was looking at the gateway cities. So what we find is that that same calculation in the gateway cities, and there's a couple examples here that are listed in the paragraph, which includes Lynn, Springfield, Brockton, Fall River, New Bedford, Lawrence. You see that the birth rates are so much higher, 23.2 in Lynn, 19.8 in Springfield, 17.9 in Brockton, 17.7 in Fall River, et cetera. So quite a bit higher than our state average of 5.8. So it's important to think about what are all the things that are happening or not happening for girls in those gateway cities that warrant more investment and support, et cetera. I know this is a very complicated graph, but what I can tell you to be able to focus on is that this is from the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. It's a big time for playoffs right now, so I should be able to say MIAA better. My son's team got knocked out, so maybe that's why I'm mispronouncing it. But MIAA, thankfully for us, does great work to track participation of high school boys and girls in sports. And so there are certain sports in Massachusetts and elsewhere that are almost purely one gender. In other words, field hockey is overwhelmingly primarily played by girls, and baseball is overwhelmingly primarily played by boys. But there are sports that are played by both genders. And so that's where you see so many less girls. And there are many, many girls who participate in these sports across our state, which is wonderful. But the difference between participation is something that's noticeable in the data. And so when you have sports like cross country and basketball and other soccer, other sports like that, where there are most usually teams in both offered to both genders in that sport, we see much less participation from girls. So this is just another aspect of girls' healthy physical activity, et cetera, that we look at as a way to say, can this change? Can we invest more? Can we do more to create those opportunities for girls to continue to be as healthy as possible? So suffice to say, there's more to come, and all of these charts and all of these data points are expressed in the executive summary and the full report that are available, that were available and at the front tables. And I'll just also say in terms of our process that not only did we spend a lot of time looking at all of those data sources that I showed on that screen, but we also spent a lot of time looking at the research that was already done by other organizations, leading nonprofits here in Massachusetts. And there were many that produce really amazing research about particular parts of this economic power, education, economics, health, well-being of women and girls, and we really appreciate the work that's done by so many other organizations, and we utilize that work and that research as part of our reports that we have generated. So we coupled that with the original analysis that we did on all the data sets that we were able to acquire. So I think I'm going to leave it there and invite everyone to Patty and everyone else to come up.
You guys. Yeah, go ahead. So thank you, Georgia and Sari, for grounding us in such thoughtful and rigorous research. It is a 40-page document and is single-spaced, and it's amazing. It has a lot of stuff in it. And please read it, because it's amazing. We are really so grateful for our partnership and the clarity you've brought to both the progress and the persistent challenges facing women and girls in Massachusetts. So data gives us direction, but it's the lived experience of women and girls and the work happening in communities every day that brings the data to life. That's why we're especially excited to shift now from research to response. So I'd like to invite two extraordinary leaders and foundation partners whose organizations are working directly with women and girls across the Commonwealth, translating insight into action every single day. So please welcome Lisa Guyon, Executive Director of We Can, an organization that supports women on Cape Cod as they navigate financial insecurity, career transitions, and pathways toward long-term stability. Since 2022, the foundation has invested more than $250,000 in We Can to support the expansion of its Hyannis location, strengthen its impact measurement, and pilot the Economic Mobility Initiative using Empath's Bridge model to help women move from short-term crisis to long-term stability. And also please welcome Natalie Martinez, CEO of Girls Inc. of Boston and Lynn, an organization that leads transformative programs that helps girls build confidence, skills, and real economic opportunity for the future. Since 2020, the foundation has invested more than $800,000 in Girls Inc. of Boston and Lynn and Strong Women, Strong Girls, supporting initiatives including Project Accelerate, a college prep program for under-resourced high school girls, the expansion of Strong Women, North Shore mentoring model connecting college women with elementary school girls in the area. Both of these leaders are not only deeply embedded in their communities, but also are part of the broader ecosystem working to ensure women and girls can thrive. Their perspectives help us understand not what just the data says, but what it looks like in real life and what it will take to move forward. So thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Yay. All right. So I'm going to start with you and Lisa and Natalie. So both of you, when you look at this report, which finding most clearly reflects what you see every day in your work for women and girls, and how does it illustrate that progress and paradox that we see in Massachusetts, where strong statewide rankings exist along persistent disparities? And why does that gap matter for the women and girls in your community, and why should we care? Lisa, why don't you start?
Okay. I was feeling nervous, and then these were our people, right? It's not our people. So I think I love the title of the report. I think it resonated. The paradox of all of this resonated deeply for me, certainly. I know, Natalie, when we met a little, to prep for today, so we both read the report and nodded while we were reading it, and I'm sure many of you did as well. I sort of walked away, and the kind of the big thought for me was, the broader the gains, the deeper the disparities, is how it felt. And I'm guessing many of you in here are working with women who those disparities are impacting every day that they're living. And so, and paradox for me feels very familiar because we serve women on Cape Cod, which is from the Bridges to Provincetown. And I think the paradox of our region is that people think it's sort of an affluent vacation destination, but it's actually a place where there's very persistent economic challenges, particularly for women, single women, older women. And just one example is when I was reading the report that resonated very clearly was the type of jobs available. So hospitality, retail, service, entry-level, healthcare, all low-wage jobs. Not all the jobs on the Cape, but many of the jobs that are flexible enough for women with children. We often see most of the women we serve are working. Most are working multiple jobs in which none are benefit eligible, so that just perpetuates more problems. And just as an example, I'm not trying to bring my own data to the stage here, but it is a statistic that really impacts, that you can feel on the Cape, is that we have 2% unemployment in July and 8% unemployment in January. And so it's like this economic whiplash that happens every year, every season, and it just has these layers that unfold because of it, for women in particular.
Thank you. It was really exciting to read the report and to see the progress that Massachusetts continues to make as a state. But then when you begin to think about the paradox and how that plays out in the communities that we serve, for Girls Inc. in particular, Girls Inc. of Boston and Lynn, and there are 7 Girls Inc. affiliates across Massachusetts. We serve Lynn, obviously, and Boston. And when you think about the girls that we're serving, what came up for me is that regardless of how high achieving our girls are, how much work and energy that they put into their academics, their life, sports, all of these statistics continue to resonate in their day-to-day. So like you, for example, our girls come into our center, they're doing great in school, they have great academics. I met with one earlier this week that was telling me some stories about why Girls Inc. matters to her. But at the same time, she doesn't have the education around healthy sexuality or how her body works. And being a part of Girls Inc. has given her an opportunity to learn about those things and to change the disparity of her not having access to resources and so forth. So the paradox for us is just that. It's access to education, information, and resources that then allows them to make sure that they can work towards achieving those great Massachusetts statistics, because in Lynn in particular, as you heard, the birth rate is astronomically high, 5 times more than what is the state's average. And so it comes down to access, opportunity, and education.
So economic insecurity, especially for mothers, single women, older women, is a thread that runs through the report. We know that programs like those at our grantee partner, the Care Center, for example, make a profound difference. They provide wraparound support for single mothers to complete high school, finish high school, apply and finish college, move to the workforce. And they also help build skills and access to resources that lead to long-term growth and economic stability. At another partner, Empath, they focus on economic mentoring mobility. Their model combines coaching, brain science, goal setting, and financial incentives to help women with their families move from poverty to long-lasting economic security. Lisa, can maybe you share some of your programs that are helping women move beyond short-term survival toward true long-term stability?
Got it. Well, WeCan is turning 25 years old this year, which I thought was a big deal until I talked to Natalie, and she said Girls Inc. is 84, and going on 85. So we're just a newbie, I guess. And our roots were actually founded at a community college in a program called Women in Transition. That program was intended to keep women on the community college track as a pathway towards employment and education and economic mobility. That funding went away, but there was a group of community leaders on the Cape that said, just because the funding went away doesn't mean that the need does, and let's create a space for all women on Cape Cod, regardless of, even those who are not in college. Any woman can walk through the doors of WeCan and find a supportive environment where they can find help navigating through transitions to stay in a stable position and move forward in their life. That's 25 years ago with that founding vision, and we've built a series of programs under the one tent of WeCan. So we offer legal consultation, financial empowerment, career and work support, mentoring, personal development programs, small business support, and now an economic mobility coaching program thanks to Empath. We joined their learning network, and we've actually the first organization on the Cape to bring that work to our region. And it's really amplifying for us the power of understanding how matching services with coaching can really lend itself to the long-term impact. Self-sufficiency is really hard to measure, period. Economic mobility is a little easier, but most of our work is very individualized. So we pair all of those things that we do with coaching, goal setting, what's the next goal after the goal you achieve now. And I just want to make a note and put a pin in it for the work that you do, because it's so important, and particularly for the Women's Foundation of Mass, who's really funding like lifespan programs for women. The work that you're doing to build self-efficacy, self-worth, confidence, healthy relationship, decision-making, the lack of that shows up in women who walk through our doors when they're 24, 36, 58, 69, and 78. Those important things that you instill in women and girls at a young age are the thread in their life that help them really build a path, a life of stability. So we spend a lot of time working on those things too, besides the practical things, the legal, the employment, the job, the mentoring. We really have to get to the empowerment piece. And that's a lot of what you do, Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, one of the clearest examples of progress and paradox in this report shows up in education and then earnings. And as Sari and Georgia talked about, in Massachusetts, girls are excelling academically. They graduate high school at higher rates than boys, they enroll in college and complete college at higher rates than boys, and yet 6 years after high school graduation, they earn an average $5,000 less than men. And at the same time, they have $5,000 more in debt. Georgia and Sari, before we turn to solutions, which I'm excited to hear about those. Can you briefly explain where this data came from and sort of what this comparison tells us about earnings and debt burden for women and what the impact is for the longer-term trajectory?
Do you want me to start, Georgia, and
Yes,
you can add on? Okay, great. So, this is not just Massachusetts. It's a finding that comes from all over the place. It's interesting. I mentioned a little bit that women tend to graduate from types of educational programs that lead to lower paying jobs eventually. They tend to be in occupations that have a lower pay and less chance for promotion or career progression than men do. And so we find that soon after graduation, if we compare people who are within the same similar occupation, same field, the gap is relatively small. But then as the workers age, the gap starts to grow pretty rapidly, and there are many reasons. I guess I mentioned some of it is sort of within occupation. Things like women are less likely to be promoted. They're less likely to move from job to job in a lateral way that produces these higher career earnings. But the big impact is really starting a family. The caregiving responsibilities are very different for men and women. We talk about that in the report. Women once having a child is one of the most expensive things a woman can do, and that definitely is a big indicator in the career gap that comes from the family, and then the earnings start to stagnate. So if you look at women who don't have children, we don't see a similar drop-off in the earnings. I'll let Georgia talk a little bit more if she has anything.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, and that is in regards to the area of STEM, because that has been over the last decade, been so much attention paid to investing more in STEM occupations and career trajectories, et cetera, for girls and women. We've devoted across lots of different sectors a lot of investment and time in doing that, and largely has been very successful in terms of getting girls during high school, as they move on to college, getting involved in STEM pathways. But even in that, you'll see some difference, and I pointed out to the slide about computer science. So there are areas of STEM that it hasn't transpired that girls or women are more involved than others. And some of those areas are connected to some of the things that Sari's explaining in terms of eventual career pathways and economic earnings, et cetera. So the paradox just continues in terms of the good work that we've done in this state and the ways that we have supported the broadening of girls' aspirations, career-wise, education-wise, et cetera. But as you look underneath that hood, you still find things where there are disparities that contribute to what we're seeing in terms of the economic power.
Thank you. So even when girls do everything right academically, the economic return isn't equal, and it's just frustrating. So Natalie, from your perspective, what strategies are you seeing working to help girls translate academic achievement into real economic opportunity and long-term earnings? And how do programs like yours close that gap between educational success and financial security?
Thank you for the question, truly. If you don't remember anything else I say today, please remember this. Early investment in girls equals long-term success, not only for the girls, but for our community and for our economy. So you probably already know that. But early investment matters. And thank you so much for the shout out, because Girls Inc. serves girls from age 5 through 25. So we go their entire early childhood all the way through young adulthood. And I'm proud that we have a framework called Project Accelerate, which all of our programs kind of come under this umbrella of helping girls to think about career paths and post-secondary education. So just to break it down a little bit more, what we do is we have programming that stems from STEM to financial literacy to healthy sexuality, all different types of programs. There's multiple programs under our umbrella, but they are all pipeline skills that we're teaching girls to help them think about who they are and who they want to be in their future. And then as they move throughout elementary school to middle school, then they enroll in our Project Accelerate program, which is a high school program that helps them. It was originally intended to help them get into college, stay in college, graduate college, and then enter the workforce. But we've expanded that to be more than just 4-year education. Is any type of career path that they see for themselves, because these young people, this generation is very innovative, and a lot of them are saying no to college, although we know college equals higher pay, but they have other ways that they want to live their lives post high school. So our programs are all encompassing leading to that Project Accelerate program, and how it's impacting our girls is it is helping them to be able to think about debt early and what it means to fund your education. Think about, this is in our financial literacy programs, thinking about how their economy contributes to their home and to their families, and then what that means for their livelihood long term, which then maps back to their physical health and their mental health and how they contribute to society. So we have lots of programs, and I can't tell you the number, so I don't want to say the wrong thing, but all of it is to get to Project Accelerate, which helps them see a pathway for their careers into the future. And the other thing I want to say, the last thing I'll say before I hand it back, is that the girls that come through our program often come back and they tell us about how excited their families are that they're participating in our programs. They go home and they're essentially train the trainer. So if they're first-gen college student, if they're, have friends that are interested in the program, we grow our programs through word of mouth, through them telling others about how excited they are to be a part of Girls Inc. I can't tell you enough. I've been with the organization just under 2 years, and it's been a phenomenal experience because we're really changing lives. But just remember, early investment, long-term success.
Got that? Okay. Unfortunately, not all girls have the opportunity to pursue a college education, and sometimes teen pregnancy gets in the way. Another one of those striking figures was just the difference between the pregnancy rates, teen pregnancy rates in the gateway cities versus all of Massachusetts. As a funder, our journey was intentional to invest in the gateway cities, where gaps in opportunity are especially pronounced and where additional resources can really make a meaningful difference. Natalie, if you could just talk a little bit about, sort of the unique challenges of the gateway cities, and in particular around teen pregnancy. Thanks.
So maybe you're thinking, why is there such a big difference between, the statistic for the Commonwealth, for Boston even, and then for Lynn, when Lynn is literally about 10 miles, although 2 hours for 10 miles. Away from Boston. I'm a Boston native, born and raised, so I can definitely make that joke. So why? Why is this happening? Why are the young ladies in Lynn struggling? And, thinking about this before coming here today, I wanted to give you a true picture. I grew up in Boston. In our communities, Mattapan, Dorchester, Roxbury, there are community center, health centers. In every community, you have access to health care. It's right there for you. You have nurses in your schools. You can get the health care that you need. And even if you don't have sexual education in your school, there's access to those resources. And that is one of the main reasons that statistic is so high in Lynn, because access to health care is really challenging in some of the gateway cities. In addition to that, it comes back to economics and being able to even have things that you need in order to be able to protect yourself. So again, the story of the young lady that I met with earlier this week, when she originally arrived at Girls Inc., of course, she knew what her body would do as a young lady. But what we did was we taught her why her body functions the way that it does and what it means to be a young lady and have a female anatomy. And from there, she told me she's now making better decisions. And those better decisions leads to her being able to protect herself so that she doesn't fall into that statistic. And then beyond the healthcare, access to healthcare, economics, because we also offer products for our girls, period products as well as sexual health products as well. Access to those resources is also what is scarce in some of the gateway cities. So that's why community centers and other health institutions is what helps to combat that statistic. And investing in programs that are getting that information out there is the way that we can work against that data point.
All right, last question. So some of the challenges highlighted in this report could be addressed effectively by these programs you've just described. Yet, women and girl-focused work receives only 1.3% of all philanthropic giving in this state. How do you see the gap between what what works and what's funded, and what broader investment could unlock? Lisa, you want to start?
Every time I hear that statistic, it gives me like the heebie-jeebies. I don't know about everybody else, but and when you drop that statistic on someone, it's like shocking, right? And I remember someone said, well, is it niche work? Is that why it gets such little? And I said, it's 50% of the population. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician, sorry, or an economist, but no, it's economic strategy. That's what investing in women is. And so I think where's the big hit? Where's the great impact? I think, again, I'm just going to come back to, I think that like the Women's Foundation, the Mass, has it right. I think it's funding programs along the continuum, the life stages. Personally, I have really transformed my thinking about coaching, adult mentoring. I've seen the power of how that plays itself out in people's lives. And so investing, I think, how we could integrate programs, and then, of course, being able to scale good things that work and replicate them, whether it's through your own replication or through partnership with others. And that's where, for me, the big punch and investment opportunity is.
I echo that completely. And let's be honest, we're educated in Massachusetts, so I have all the answers. So no, I'm just kidding. But I do have really strong thoughts about how we can change the system and how we can impact the system. And it starts with organizations like ours. We know our communities, so trust us to bring the services that the community needs. So it's about trust first, and then that leads into trust-based philanthropy. So similar to what you were saying, I really tout the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts as our gold platinum standard funder, because the relationship is built around trust. You heard the number, $800,000, and I'm on a mission to get it to $1 million, but investment in Girls Inc. and Strong Women, Strong Girls. And I say that jokingly, but I'm serious. Being able to work with funders and funders that trust us to tell them what the need of the community is and allow us to bring those services is a way to begin to impact the system and impact our community. The last thing I do want to say is in terms of scale as well. Scale is really, really challenging for any nonprofit, and we know that if you're not growing, you're stagnant and you're not doing anything and people don't want to fund you. But if we look at scaling in a smart way through partnership, through now that we know each other, through our organizations working together, the connection I made with the Girl Scouts of Eastern Mass today, we can work together and coalition build and scale together so that we can have true impact in our communities. That's the way I think we should approach it.
Amen.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. What we've just heard really underscores something important, that it isn't a gap in solutions, they're there, it's a gap in investment. And we know these programs work, we see the outcomes, we see lives changed, and yet the demand really far exceeds the resources available. In our most recent grant cycle, we received requests for $7.5 million. We're really excited because we have a record $3.5 million to invest. This is our largest grant offering to date, but this falls way short of $7.5 million. So the need is clear, the capacity is there, we have organizations we can fund, the opportunity is really in front of us. So if we want progress in Massachusetts to truly reach all women and girls, expanding investment in these kinds of organizations isn't just doing the work, it's not helpful, it's absolutely essential. So I'm now excited to turn toward you guys for questions. Brianne, please raise your hand. Brianne is going to bring the, go ahead. There you go.
Hi, thank you, everybody. This was exciting to hear, and especially you two ladies. I had an opportunity a few years ago through the Women's Foundation. Hey, you're down the Cape. Would you come see Weekend? I was really shocked at how much money they were able to raise the night I was there, and I thought it was terrific. But it makes me think back of, you said trust. Also, you two, you believe in what you're doing, you have a confidence. How we can get others to feel that confidence, I think, is so important too. You made another point. There's so many about meeting a few other organizations that you can connect with. I found years ago when I was doing some work, just volunteering, helping with some nonprofits, and the Boston Foundation was slammed and it was a bad time. They couldn't give money at the time financially to the places they were dealing with. But when they heard me, I happened to be talking about a program we were doing. It was for the homeless, but with 3 other organizations. It was like magic for them. So I do think that there's organizations out there, I can't tell you who, but would want to fund you if they hear what you're doing with others, because there's too many nonprofits. We need them. But to have them come more together, to have collaboration, as you just said, I think can help everybody. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Sagan with my co-director from the Metro West Women's Fund. Thank you so much to the Women's Foundation of Mass and Wellesley for this report. It's just the beginning, and we really, really need it. I have a question for the researchers. The recent youth risk survey, the CDC did a national press conference and report on what they heard. And their recent reporting is that for girls, 1 out of 5 girls from the risk survey reported experiencing sexual assault. What did you find, or when you looked at the Massachusetts numbers?
I think it's page 33. I'm so sorry. I don't think I can give you that answer right off the top of my head. But there are multiple charts in the larger report that look at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, both some of it looking at national and some of it the Massachusetts. And so hopefully we captured that for you, but I'd also be happy to we have all that data now, and be happy to follow up with you to see if there's some more things that would be helpful, to the foundation. So, but yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top. But check page 33, it might be good.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm on the junior board of the Emerging Leaders Network at the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts, and I love all the data. I think it's going to be so helpful. I'm also a policy wonk, so I love all the policy proposals at the end, so I'm reading those. How has the data been received so far? Because I know in my conversations at work, I work at McKinsey, I've said, there's a reason there's not as many women partners that are men. They're like, oh, well, women are self-selecting out of that because they want to be at home with their kids, and they're smart. They prioritize things better than men do. And I'm like, ah! So, how is it being received, and people saying, well, explaining away the data?
So actually, to tell you the truth, this is our launching event. So we just in the last couple of days have finalized the reports that you're seeing out there. And we also have a web page that is up that has some of the graphs that we've shared and the executive summary information on it. So I think your question is still to be answered because it hasn't gone out yet. So this is the launching event of sharing all of that data. So I hope that it will be an opportunity for people to really dig into those reports and to take that data and move it towards the type of programming and change and support that that we've been talking about today. So I think that the answer is yet to come there. I don't know if you want to talk about any of the historical sort of economics in particular.
I know. I feel like the economic data is not dissimilar to what we've seen for the U.S. as a whole in the past, and it's interesting to see what kind of debate it sparks. Like, it often gets down to this weird cycle of everyone's trying to explain away everything, and then like if women just stay 35, never get married, never have children, and change their name to John, then everything's gonna be golden. But it often goes down that spiral. But I found it always. I teach gender economics here at Wellesley College, and my students are often quite surprised about the data because they come from backgrounds where they're very high achieving. They've been doing all these things, and they don't foresee that there are any obstacles in the world for them. And then when they see kind of what happens, after you graduate, that it can be a bit of a shock. So I think it's helpful to just know and then understand, and this is what the data looks like, and then you can think about how it might impact your own choices and your own life and your own thinking.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, thank you, Christina, and thank you, the Women's Foundation of Massachusetts. I remember Christina calling me about this when I served on the Massachusetts Commission of the Status of Women for 10 years, first Black woman to chair the Commission for the Commonwealth, and we were the first in the country, thanks to Governor Baker, to put pay equity into law, and certainly under Maura, we've had to work now to try to enforce that law. I want to reaffirm and just ask, did I hear something that I thought you to say? Did you say that Black women are the lowest earners in the Commonwealth in your data?
I think it was Hispanic women who had this is sort of for the full-time, full-year workers, if I remember my stats right. The Hispanic women had the lowest full-time earnings, and then Black women were the second lowest. Yeah. Okay.
I thought you said Black women, but black and brown. So thank you for your data. I will be leaving here thinking, I always love the data, but to you all's earlier comments, it's like, what do we do about that data as a mom of a black, they like to call her brown, she's a quarter white. But as a mom of that, I'm also the chair of Fontbonne Academy, all-girls school in Milton, and my daughter is the first in our family to earn 3 degrees, is a lawyer, certainly makes a good income, but I sit with that and I say, you know, as one of few women of color even in this room, you know, what do I leave here now and do with that information? Because so much of the Commonwealth, we had this data from the state, just has not changed, and it's really kind of sad to even think about. As a parent, it worked out well for my 2, but you invest so much in education, in college, and that to hear that you could be 6 years out of high school and that Black and Latinas are the lowest paid worker, it's just it's disheartening. It's something I suspected hadn't changed since I left the commission, but to hear the data, it's disheartening, and I just have to leave here and think about what can I do from my perch to change that. So thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you. I agree. I think it is disheartening, and it's not changing as one would like. I've been looking at numbers for very many years, like 25 years of research, and like some of the numbers are changing so slowly that you have to squint to see any kind of a change. It is disheartening, and I.
So much of it, we say this. My day job is I'm CEO of Boston Arts Academy Foundation, and our mantra is that while talent is evenly distributed, opportunity is not. And so much of this is about opportunity and race and bias. So much of it is that's what it's about, and not getting the opportunities, particularly when it comes to pay equity. Very disheartening. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica McMahon. Thank you so much for all of this great research and data. And I'm thinking from the perspective of how funders might and philanthropists might put some of this data into implementation. And so I think my question is going to be a little bit intuition-based, but we have some challenges, right? And then we're also in the threshold of opportunity with next-gen donors getting ready to step to the table for the first time, maybe in their family's history, women leading that, women projected to inherit the majority of the nation's private wealth for the first time in our country's history. And so we're thinking also of philanthropy so differently. In this data, I just wonder if you have any gut intuition as to how we can appeal to next-gen donors in a way that bring them to these social impact issues differently than we have in the past. That's a loaded question, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best I think Christina would be better at this. I spend most of my time trying to figure out who to give money to. I don't spend a lot of time how to get money out of people. So.
Do you want me to comment?
Yeah.
So we've talked about this before. I'm really looking forward to that wealth transfer happening. I've heard about this wealth transfer for a really long time, like 25 years. I've been listening to this wealth transfer. So I'm really looking forward to it. But the reality is, and I don't want to be disheartening, as Danella said, but philanthropists thus far in our country do not prioritize women and girls. And that has been the case for as long as they've been tracking philanthropy. And I'm not sure what we can do to change that. I have ideas, but it's very, very challenging. And there's many factors that go into it, but when people do write checks towards women and girls, they are almost twice as likely to send it overseas. So there's that phenomena as well. And I also want to remind people that the 1.3% in our state of all philanthropic dollars that go to women and girls serving nonprofits, that includes this amazing women's college and all of the women's colleges in our state. That's in the numerator. So that 1.3% includes women's colleges, which make up about 40 to 45% of that 1.3%. So without the women's colleges, it's crumbs. And it's below the national average of 2%. So it broke 2% nationally very recently. So I think, that's why the Women's Foundation exists, and there's women's foundations in 44 states across our country. But prioritizing women and girls as your philanthropic focus is a mystery to me, because meta-analysis has shown that social policies and public policy programs really, really work well for women and girls. They take it and they run with it. So it's actually philanthropically an excellent investment. And that's not the case with other groups. With women and girls, it works really, really, really well. So that's one of the reasons why we do the work we do, is because the investing that we do in these women and girls serving nonprofits is extraordinarily impactful. It's a no-brainer philanthropically. So I'm hoping that that comes out more, but I'm so excited about this wealth transfer.
Hi, following up on this philanthropic theme here. First of all, I'm Barbara Hayes, and I'm a WCW employee alum, and being here today just reminds me why I miss working with you all so much. So thank you for the excellent research and application of research conversation. One of the things I wonder about, I work I advise nonprofits in philanthropy and strategy and all of that, and I feel like the next layer of questioning, and I don't know what the plans are for the next step with all this incredible data, and I have not had the chance to see the whole thing yet, of course, but I wonder, the question that I bump up against with donors and organizations trying to address change is what moves the needle. And, following up on Christina's point about investments in women and girls actually having impact, that's not new news, but somehow it's not sticking. And I wonder if there are other things like stable housing, language ability, things that underlie the metrics of the gateway cities that might be worth elevating and thinking about, because those obviously impact women and families and children and educational tracks and all those things too. So I don't know, I guess my question is, have you thought about what's next after this, or are you just wiping your forehead saying,
well, we are going to have a review we're going to do this again in 3 years, so that's for sure. But we also want to decide what we want to drill down on and what we want to do. One of the areas that I'm really interested in is older women. I think older women are invisible, and I think we really need to address that. So we're going to start looking more closely at the programs, Lisa's programs. They're 15% women over 65. Rosie's Place, 25% women over 65. So that's one area that we're going to be looking at that we think is important to address. But again, going back to what Natalie said, make the investments early too. So you really got to do both. Not sure if I answered that question, but I tried. Yes. So I think it's a good time to wrap up. Thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. 30 seconds, each one of you. What would you change first, and what do you think would make the most difference? 30 seconds.
It's so hard to say this in 30 seconds. There's many things I would change, but I think one thing that could make a difference and it's sort of going back to these underlying things, is if we could lower the cost of daycare and have after-school care that's affordable or free and high quality, I think that would help a lot of families, not just families overall, but women and single mothers in particular. That would help reduce the need to take the big career gaps, keep women continue working, so that would really boost their earnings trajectories through the lifetime, reduce the pay gap, actually greater happiness in middle age, people say, and better economic stability, independence, higher retirement savings. I think it would that would be my pet. Low-cost childcare, not much to ask.
Great.
I'll just add in one quick take on the education part, and we talked about the career and technical schooling participation, and say that thinking about investments and encouragement, aspirational work in programs like we've heard about that encourages girls to pursue opportunities in career and technical pathways would be one great place to invest. I also just want to add the mantra of WCW is a world that is good for women is good for everyone. And just as a way to say equitable economy lifts all boats. And hopefully that's the direction we're moving.
Thank you.
It's such a hard question. I mean, to your point, Georgia, I once had a woman say to me, we live by the tides on the Cape. And it's like so true, like in so many different ways. So I think that the social context and kind of the value of the impact that women have in our community and how women see themselves and the value of what they bring to our community. That's like my ethereal one. My like on the ground one is social determinants of health are so critical, and I feel that some of the more federal and state investments on housing, those are, I think private philanthropy is really pulling in and finding the models that are working in each community. It feels very localized. I think some of those bigger, that was longer than 30 seconds, some of that bigger investment like housing, I'd really like to see, particularly on the Cape, housing for women at different stages of life, like step-down housing, congregate housing, collaborative housing.
Thank you. I'm still resonating with this young lady's comments, the first person to speak, and the fact that there's over 45,000 nonprofits in the Commonwealth, or in Boston, I think. So I don't know that I would change anything. But I do want to give you the stat that they did a national survey of nonprofits, and 46% of them are either about to close or thinking about merger, acquisition, partnership. 46%, that's almost half of nonprofits who know what the communities need. So what I would do is get involved, each one, reach one, so tell everybody about this research, get the word out there. Mass Collab is a new funder that is trying to bring nonprofits together so we can work together, that coalition building I talked about, so that we won't have to close doors and close programs. Citizen schools close programs. There's lots of things happening. So my only last point is tell someone about this so that we can be stronger together.
Awesome. Great note to end. So yes, and please meet our grantee partners. They have special name tags. They're doing all the great work in this state, and thank you. Again, Georgia and Sari, for wonderful work, and thank everybody for coming.